Save the Semantics, episode 308. It is April 17th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Thursday evening. There are no basketball games today, so I thought it would be a good time to just kind of give sort of like a final preview. Obviously, not all of the playoff matchups are set yet for the 1 and 8 spots, but honestly, I mean, what am I what am I gonna say about a Cleveland, or a Thunder matchup? I don't know. I don't think either of those are gonna be really all that interesting. Who knows? Who knows? But I just don't really know what I can really add to that. So we'll leave those off the list. If anything, if anything interesting develops in either of those series, then obviously I'll talk about it. But for now, should be pretty straightforward in terms of what I expect. But yeah, no games on today. I might honestly kind of use this as an opportunity to maybe catch up on some shows. Been watching. I started watching Spy Family, the anime show, which it's been out for a little while now, but I recently started watching it. It's a good comfort show. It's very very chill. Not exactly a lot of high stakes, but it's funny. It's well done, well animated, lighthearted, good stuff. It's nice to kind of have that as a thing. If you're ever in the need to watch something a little less intense. I haven't really touched on gaming stuff for a while, so I'll just do like a little brief discussion here. Switch 2 related things. It's honestly kind of a buzzkill, and kind of it's disappointing, I would say, just how quickly kind of the hype and sort of the anticipation for Switch 2 has tapered off, with just the collection of obviously external factors that I've already talked about, but also just in terms of how Nintendo has kind of approached in their marketing and all that stuff, right? And their relaying of information. Like, it's just been so like scattered. It feels just off-putting, I think is a good word to use here. Really the biggest contributor to that is the fact that are the game's prices, right? I think most people, sure, the console price itself is pretty steep for a Nintendo console, but I think just the game pricing, especially for Mario Kart World, has really been kind of the big thing that has kind of drove people, at least online. You know what I mean? It might not really be, who knows, that might not be necessarily representative of the full consumer base, but at least just what I'm seeing, it seems like a lot of people are not happy with it, including myself, right? I think it does feel like a lot of people are not happy with it. So it's like I reflected on this when the direct happened. I'm wondering if like any of that is actually going to translate to Nintendo, like, maybe potential, maybe lackluster sales for the Switch 2. I don't know. Like, that's like a whole conversation, right? Like, how much of this sort of internet online outrage translates to, actual sales? Like, are people who are upset, like, are they considered to be a part of the main casual user base, or is that much more of like a niche kind of niche sort of group of people? I'm not exactly sure, right? Are people who are, or I guess like the the other way of looking at it is, are people who are more loyal to the brand, who are willing to just buy whatever Nintendo puts out, is that strong enough to be able to kind of carry this launch? You know what I mean? Because I do see comments regarding, I've seen a lot of just disappointing and sort of disapproving comments. But I also see people that are just like, no, I'm just gonna get it. Like, it looks good. I'm gonna care. I don't really care too much. Like, I'm expecting that I'll probably be putting in just hundreds of hours into like a Mario Kart, so I'm sort of justifying the price on my end. But it's a little hard to kind of sift through those and try to come to the conclusion whether this will actually result in anything tangible. You know what I mean? I have no idea. My expectation is that I think that the Switch 2 is probably going to sell well, because the Switch 1 user base, I think, is large enough to where, even if like a majority, or if like a good chunk of that user base is thrown off and is not interested in getting the console at launch, I think that there are enough fans, that there are enough hardcore fans that they're willing to just get it for whatever, because they're already a part of that like ecosystem and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I still believe that it's going to sell well at launch. How well it's going to sustain is like a whole nother question, right? But at least for the beginning of this launch, it's probably going to do fine, I think, in my opinion. We'll see if there are like actual results showing that Switch 2 hasn't sold very well. I would be very interested in seeing that, and I think you can clearly look at some decisions that were made by Nintendo and pinpoint those moments as being like, hey, this was like a big enough detractor to push off and, I guess, dissuade customers from getting the system and the game. And that sort of led to poorer sales than maybe expected. But we'll see. I have no idea. I don't know what I'm very curious to see what the reception is going to be like, because there was a quote unquote direct for the Mario Kart World that came out today. I didn't watch it. I'm just not, whatever. Like, I'm not a big Mario Kart fan or anything like that. It's not like, I don't know. What is there anything that's going to be in it that's going to make me convince me like, holy shit, I got to get this? You know what I mean? Are there going to be RPG elements or anything like that? I don't know. But I saw, I didn't watch the trailer, but I did see kind of conversations following that sort of direct and video, and it seems like it was pretty underwhelming. They were already showing, or they were showing things that they've already kind of shown in the Switch 2 direct, so it seemed kind of maybe redundant in a lot of instances. So it seems people are kind of disappointed, but again, that's another case of where is this sort of online the sort of online discourse gonna carry forward into people not actually buying the game, right? I mean, there are going to be instances, I think, where people are going to cave in regardless, right? Like, I think people are just going to be like, fuck it, I'm going to buy it anyway. So I don't know, it'll just be just something to keep an eye out on, as a potential kind of topic to sort of get into in the future, right? Does online discourse and disagreement lead to actual results in things that do happen? I mean, you could make that's a whole conversation in itself regarding everything, you know what I mean? Do these things that happen in the online sphere actually affect reality? I don't know. That's a whole nother thing. But it is such a interesting kind of for me personally, like just going from feeling pretty excited, like I wasn't like exceptionally hyped or anything like that, but I was pretty excited to see kind of what the Switch 2 was going to look like, and what the launch lineup was going to be, and all of these things. And honestly, maybe part of me had some higher expectations in terms of what it was going to look like, instead of it being what it seems to be in my eyes, a significant hardware upgrade. But outside of that, it's like, what, is there anything else that's going to bring me to the table, and make me want to get out there and purchase it on launch. And right now it just doesn't really seem to be the case, right? We'll see what I think the thing that will be a factor for me. I would like to see what the reviews are gonna look like for Mario Kart World. Like, is it gonna be like, oh shit, I gotta get my hands on this. This is gonna be the next thing, to sort of jump on, and is it gonna be a significant enough of a upgrade and experience in terms of, if I'm able to transfer over my library from my Switch to Switch 2, is it going to be a significant enough upgrade in performance and all of those kinds of things? Is that going to be enough to sort of, you know, incentivize me to get it? All of these things, right? I think I will be in the camp of waiting to see the what the reviews are going to be like, and what people are going to be saying, and those kinds of things. So I'm going to be kind of in the waiting camp, for at least a little bit. I think the issue is just going to be like, will there, you know, if I am in the waiting camp, how long will I have to wait to get my hands on one, right? Is it, if it is, maybe going to sell out and those kinds of things. So, I don't know. And obviously the price, like, is there going to be a price increase, following like the tariffs and all that stuff? So those are things to absolutely, consider. But yeah, it is just the kind of the whiplash going from feeling pretty excited to just kind of, I don't know, in my shoes, feeling pretty turned off with kind of the practices that they're going forward. Like, you could absolutely argue all of like the geopolitical nonsense and all these other external factors and those kinds of things, but ultimately Nintendo is the one making the decision to price their pack in game, what should be a pack in game, the Welcome to Switch tour. That feels kind of a slap in the face, and then on top of that, and then of course the games costing, pretty significant prices, and all of these things. So yeah, it's sort of, it has really kind of, unfortunately, because I was, again, excited, but it has kind of soured my taste for wanting to get involved and play and stuff, because I just am like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't like the direction that this is going. This has been my fear for quite some time, honestly, after like, a couple of years ago with like the price for Tears of the Kingdom and all of those things. So for this to kind of come to fruition, unfortunately, I think is sort of, it sucks to see. Like, so it feels like it's such a premium on gaming now, and like, even though I considered myself to be a fairly avid gamer, I just can't. I'm just not someone who is able to justify just dropping $100 on a game. You know what I mean? Maybe like once a year I'll get like a special edition for something, for a game that I really want. But outside of that, it's like I just, it's tough, man. So I I am fairly, I think I am a pretty, I have a balanced approach in terms of like, the games that I buy and those kinds of things. I really do seek out discounts if I can. If it is a game that I just straight up just want, I'll buy it for like a reasonable price. But yeah, outside of that, to like pay exorbitant prices for Mario Kart, we'll see, man. Like, if it is like worth that cost, that high cost of admission, then maybe it is worth it. But we'll see, man. I don't know. I'm very much on the fence, as you can tell. So, yeah, it's gonna be. I forgot exactly when the I forgot when the launch is. Like, I actually forgot when they're gonna launch it, because pre-orders aren't up yet. They've obviously pushed those back. So I don't know if that's gonna affect the launch. They said that it's not going to, but we'll see about that. But yeah, it's feeling kind of it's a weird spot, just considering all of this, like, just the excitement, outside of myself. Like, I think people were really looking forward to all of this, and now that it just seems like it's not going like swimmingly, if I want to put it that way. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out on those things. So obviously, speaking of games, on a better note, I have been playing some Xenoblade X, kind of on and off here. I just continue to enjoy the game, man. There's not really too much more to add there. I I just sort of it's a nice balance. So what I kind of like to do sometimes is I like to, maybe I'll listen to like a podcast and game and those kinds of things, if it's a more casual sort of thing. With X, like when it comes to the more basic missions or those kinds of things, it's one of those instances where I feel like I can kind of do that if I want to grind for levels, if I want to do sort of these like fetch quests or monster killing quests or whatever. I can kind of do those without really being super invested. Like, once it gets to kind of the more like story based missions, or like the affinity missions, which I talked about a little while back, those I can be, obviously I'll be, giving it my full attention. But if I just want to like level up and those things, like I can kind of do that while, listening to like music, or listening to like a podcast or something like that. So it's kind of it's got a good, I like kind of having that balance, you know what I mean? Because I do like grinding, but I also like grinding while kind of, just sort of, I know it's not, divvying up your attention or whatever is not exactly the best, but like that's just kind of what I like to do. And especially during this time going into the playoffs, I like listening to a lot of basketball podcasts and that kind of thing. So listening to that while doing kind of just, more grindy missions or whatever, I think is like a nice little balance. So the fact that I can kind of do that if I want to really just hone in on the story and hone in on main mission stuff, yeah, I could absolutely do that. But I can also play as a more of just like a casual thing, and not really put too much thought into what I'm doing necessarily. So it's got that going, and I've been really enjoying that. I've been taking my time kind of slow with it, in order to, like, the next kind of big step is to like fly in the game, right, as I've talked about. And I think I need to sort of progress the main story in order to kind of get to that point. But I've been slowly kind of enjoying it. I've been enjoying using the scales, like just on land and stuff, and that's just been really fun. But I think that's kind of gonna be like the next big thing, is to fly around some giant robot. And I'm looking kind of ahead too, maybe a little too far ahead, because I anticipate that I'll be playing X for quite some time. But I believe the Suikoden remasters have already been released, or maybe they're gonna release soon. I'm not exactly sure. That's one that I would really like to play, because I've just heard great things about those games, and I've heard like the combat stuff is pretty fun as well. So that is kind of high on my list of games that I would like to play at least this year. You know what I mean? I don't know what, I don't know, like right now I'm sort of yeah, it's been a slow year for gaming so far for me, right, which is fine. I've sort of, I kind of anticipated that a little bit, but I would like to play, I want to get kind of catch up on that. So maybe like the summer or whatever, I'll get into it. once I've had my fill with X. But I think X is really just going to take up the majority of my time for now. But I do want to get into Suikoden. That's kind of, that's sort of top of my list for this year at least. Also, the Trails in the Sky remake as well. So there's just continues to be. Look, man, I know I've been sort of harping on Switch 2 stuff, but like I've been saying, I am perfectly fine with my current setup. And I have plenty of stuff that I can fill my library with. I have more things that I could play and more things to check out. So it's not I'm not in a rush to get into to Switch 2. It's just more of the fact like it would be nice to get a little, soft or hardware upgrade and all those things that would be sort of nice to have. But again, it's just a little hard to sort of justify that. But right now, I think I'm chilling with what I got and what I could potentially sort of add to my library. Let's switch to basketball. So the the really just awful 9 and 10 matchups were yesterday, and I mean they were awful. I turned off the Bulls and Heat game about halfway through. Bulls lost by like 20, and then the next game after that, the Kings lost by 20 to the Mavs. So just some pitiful performances from both the Kings and the Bulls. Like, man, the jokes kind of just write themselves in terms of, the whole Sacramento Bulls and Chicago Kings and all that stuff, right? Man, it's just like they are kind of mirrors of each other in a certain way, right? Where you bundle together a bunch of players that you're sort of like, oh, maybe we can make this work. I think in the case of Chicago, at least there's a little bit of, you know, I talked about this a little while back. There's a little bit more hope for them because they at least have some younger players that they could invest in with like a Josh Giddey or a Matas Buzelis and those kinds of things. The Kings they don't got anybody. Like, who do they have? They have trade pieces. You know what I mean? They got, it sounds, and also they fired their GM and then they hired a new GM today. So it's just like the organizational stuff going on over in Sacramento is rough, man. That's tough, dude, to be in that position. It seems like a full rebuild is probably necessary for those guys. Like, what else is like, then you're just kind of stuck in purgatory, kind of in the same exact situation the Bulls have been in for the last few years, right? With a DeMar DeRozan and a Zach LaVine, it is like they just, like, you look, it is just such ludicrous, like, it's just such lunacy and kind of like insanity to like try to like replicate something that didn't work. You know what I mean? It's like we can actually try to make that work. And it's like I don't know. Here's the thing. I liked what they did at the trade. I liked what the Kings did at the trade deadline because it's like, hey, at least you got something out of the De'Aaron Fox trade. You know what I mean? At least you got Levine and stuff. But to be put kind of in the same exact situation as the Bulls were, and the Bulls, I guess, currently are, is yeah. Like yes, last night was kind of the it was the perfect example of what poor ownership and poor kind of decision making at the top sort of looks like. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. I talked about this when, I sort of talked a little bit more about tanking and all of that stuff, right? and you could sort of do the kind of like the tanking versus play-in conversation in regards to like both of these franchises. But I understand not wanting to lose for the sake of, trying to kind of reap the benefits of losing. Like, it sucks, man. Like, I get it. Tanking sucks. Like, it's not a good practice. It's just, unfortunately, just the way things have been. It is just the best way to, kind of rise your franchise and, and bring it to a completely different level. Like, that is just, historically, that is just what has worked. If you can get like a top 5 pick, if you can land on like a number 1 player, the likelihood that that person is able to maybe, it's not like a given necessarily, but getting like a high draft pick and a you know high level prospect is like a has been like the catalyst for change and for like a franchise to become like a good team moving forward. Like, that's just how it has been in just the history of the NBA. And it sucks, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really like that, because you don't like to watch your team lose. It's just like, oh, we have to lose because we need to get better. And it's like, I mean, sure, like, you could argue like it's good to, like, sharpen steel and all of that stuff, but in terms of the player development kind of thing, it's like you don't really necessarily want to be put in that position. I don't think. I mean, you have instances of teams that just continually tank without having really seeing any results. Like the Charlotte Hornets is like a pretty prime example of that. So it's tough, man. Like, it's tough to really to move to that. But I think in the case of like a Sacramento or a Chicago, I think the issues are already so kind of deep within their organization that there needs to be significant change in their approach in terms of, trying to build towards something, right? Again, it's not easy to lose, but if you just are continuing to be in this position of absolute mediocrity with like no sense of direction, no real significant, sure, in the Bulls case, again, you can argue you have some potential pieces in a Buzelis or a Giddy, but even then it's like, okay, what about these other surrounding pieces? Why is Patrick Williams getting 90 million? Why does he have a $90 million contract? Like, those things you are things that have affected this franchise. You know what I mean? And in the case for the Kings, it's like, after they made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years or something like that, they didn't do anything to like upgrade their roster. They didn't do anything to try to improve aspects of their roster to make it better. Like, there were some clear issues that they had, especially watching them play against the Warriors, right? It was just like, Sabonis was a clear, he just like a weak defender, just not a paint protector. The things that were successful in the regular season don't translate into playoff basketball, and you can see that in yesterday's game as well. They don't have like size. I mean, that's kind of like a Warriors thing too, you know what I mean? But they don't have like the high IQ players that can kind of circumvent that. They don't have they just don't have the caliber of player to help kind of aid them in becoming a better defensive player, or defensive team. So they just kind of stood pat, right? From what I remember, like, I don't even think they made any. I don't even remember what their like off-season moves were. Like, they just did the same exact things, while like other teams got better. Other teams just got better around them, in the Western Conference, and it wasn't enough. Like, it was a very kind of reactive sort of decision, and not making any changes, you know what I mean? When there was like a clear, ceiling, especially when you're a third seed, and sure, like the Warriors champion, they just got off like a championship. Steph got a 50 ball, all of these things, right? It's like if they faced off against like another team, I don't even remember who was in that. It was it was 2023, right? I don't even remember who was, or no, 2022. Like I don't even remember who was like in that range of in like the sixth to like seventh range or whatever. But it's like, okay, maybe if they did win like a first round series, then maybe it's like they could make the decision to like run it back. But they lost. They were the higher seed and they lost in the first round. You know what I mean? So it's like, wouldn't you like, that's a pretty clear indication that there are some significant flaws with this team. And it's like, sure, maybe you came up against like a championship team in the Warriors, but the Warriors were not, they didn't have like the best, that was the year of like the Jordan Poole punch and all of this other nonsense that happened. Like that was clearly not like that was a very, and then Wiggins dealing with his issues, like his personal issues, not in like a not in like a bad way. He was just dealing with those things, and he wasn't there for like the majority of the season. So it was just not a good like bounce back year after winning a championship. Like it was, but despite that, the Warriors still won. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It just, so you look at that situation, and you don't think that you need to make changes from like from like the Kings perspective. I don't know. It's such a, I don't, I just, it's so, yeah. And then now they just completely, they don't have De'Aaron Fox anymore. They obviously traded him. It feels like they're just gonna have to blow it up. I don't know what exactly it's gonna happen, but it feels like kind of an end of this iteration of the Kings, if it wasn't already over in some instances. Start over, unfortunately. But it does really come down to just disorganization within the organization. It seems like just their owner is just the way he handles things is like an absolute mess. I mean, that's just been the case for however long he's been the owner. So, like, it tracks, man. It tracks. Like, that's the thing. If it has been an issue continuing on from, way before, and it's like, well, why are the Kings always like in, why are they always just like such a poorly run organization or whatever? It's like, it's always something at the top. There's always something at the top that is causing that. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. What are they gonna do? I feel like until that dude leaves, which is what, Vivek Ranadive, also friends with John Fisher, who is a notoriously one of the worst sports owners in the entirety of of just all of sports in general, right? So it's just like, listen, man, you kind of, the company that you keep tells a lot about you. So yeah, it's that's a tough situation to be in. I have a lot of obviously not a Kings fan or anything, but I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for Kings fans and stuff like that. But yeah, those play-in games are absolutely terrible. It was just like, oh man, it's tough, man. Like it's one of those things. Obviously, it's probably a little reactionary to be like, the play-in is a fail, to react in that way after seeing these games, but especially if you have these like middling teams to bad teams that are in the mix for like a playoff hunt, it's like, I don't know, it's sort of, you get what you expect in a lot of ways, right? It worked out where like the Warriors like Grizzlies game turned out to be pretty good if you're just viewing it as a just as like a neutral fan. But it's so far this year for play-in stuff, it's been pretty it's been kind of a miss, right? 3 blowout wins. That's tough. Anyways, let's get into the real playoffs, which start on Saturday, which I am very obviously I've been saying this, but I am very excited for to really get into the times that I've been consistently the most like excited for is the opening kind of week of the NBA, and then like the first round of the playoffs is really the most one of the more exciting times of the NBA season. So we got some pretty interesting matchups. I already kind of touched upon these yesterday or earlier. So you got we'll start off. We'll do 2-7, and then we'll just kind of work our way down. So we got the on the East we got the Celtics and the Magic, and then we got the who's the second seed? The Rockets and the Warriors. So Celtics Magic, I don't think that's gonna be a very competitive series. Maybe the Magic steal one off of them, but I don't really know, like, just the fact, and we saw this too in the Atlanta game where they just went through this sort of like scoring drought. I just feel like that's not going to work well for them. Like, especially if they get into a point where just nobody on their team is able to score, and you're getting into like Paolo, Banchero ISOs, that's just not going to bode well for the Magic. And just sort of considering where they are, like, sure, they've had like a nice little, just the the kind of the bumpy, twists and turns that their season has taken. The fact that there is kind of like maybe there's like maybe a sense of like rejuvenated energy and that kind of thing. The issues with their roster still very clearly exist. The fact that they don't have these, other shooting options to kind of surround Paolo and Franz with. KCP it seems like he's gotten a little better over the course of the later part of the season, but it's still not enough to kind of, bump up their offense. And they don't have like a point guard. They don't have like a true point guard. So I don't know, like there are some very clear holes in that, and just the lack of offensive power, I think is gonna be kind of the death of them, unfortunately. So I think it's gonna be pretty clear. It's either gonna be a sweep or 5 games. It would be it'd be cool to see them get at least one, but I unfortunately don't think it's gonna be super competitive for this series. I touched upon this a little, I touched upon the Rockets Warriors a little bit. There's going to be more to kind of delve into as the series progress, and as coaches make adjustments and all of these things. But right now, I do like our chances. I'll just sort of reiterate. I do think that the experience is going to be the thing that sort of carries in a similar case to the Kings Warriors series from a couple seasons ago. I do think that is going to be a similar situation to this this Warriors Rockets series. I do think that the experience is going to overcome the whatever energy that the Rockets are going to bring. They're going to be, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. I think it's going to be Warriors in 6. I do think that it's going to be, it's going to go back and forth, but just the fact that there is no clear superstar, there's no clear number one option for the Rockets is going to be an issue for them. There's not going to be just like a go-to scorer that they can, I guess, turn to in order to, fill out some of those deficiencies. You could argue that's kind of a similar situation to what the Magic were in I guess the Magic just they just don't have anybody, you know what I mean, that can really supplement their scoring. At least the Rockets have some players that can do that with like a Jalen Green and like a Dylan Brooks with who can shoot the three and those kinds of things. But those things are I think are gonna bite them in the ass. So I feel pretty good. I feel fairly good about this one. I mean, this was kind of the preferred matchup even before all of the all of like the seeds were locked in. So maybe this kind of worked out in the Warriors' favor. We'll see, but I like our chances. I think it's not going to be easy. I don't want to write off the Rockets. Like they're a number one, or sorry, they're a number two seed for a reason. But I do think that, and I think they're probably a better team than that Kings team from a couple of seasons ago. I mean, the Kings had just like the number one offense that season. So that was kind of their calling card. For this Rockets team, it's obviously like things on the defensive end. But you have to find players that can score, and I think there's going to be a way for the Warriors to really just like dig in their heels, especially with how Draymond has been playing, right? I think that would be kind of a clear indicator. And actually, here's another thing that's like a little bit more like outside of the game. I've been to Houston before. I haven't been to. I've seen like the Toyota Center. I've gone past it before, and I don't know if like the Rockets are the biggest thing, because I think in Texas especially, football is kind of the big thing, right? I mean, you could argue football just is kind of the king in the US, right? But I never I didn't see like anybody walking around with like Rockets gear. Maybe I saw like some vintage, jerseys for sale somewhere, but it just never, like, I didn't see a ton of and sure, maybe it was because it was the off season because I went in the summer, but I just never got a sense that like the Rockets were like the draw there. And sure, they were bad too. They were really bad a couple of years ago, so that was probably something, the team, the city's not really going to be supporting you if you aren't, showing up with the results. Like that's just kind of the case with American sports, right? But yeah, it just never came to me that this was a Rockets town. Like this is not like, the Rockets are like, you aren't like, you didn't get that kind of pride necessarily, right? And I'm not trying to diminish anybody, who's like a big fan. I'm just talking generally, right? And I really don't mean that as like an insult. I just think with like just like a general observation of it, it doesn't seem like the Rockets are prioritized in Houston. Now, if we compare that to somewhere like Sacramento, regardless of how bad their teams have been, and maybe this is because that, the Kings are like kind of the only professional sports team. Well, they have the A's now, but you know what I mean? That's like a whole another situation. But the Kings really are their only, professional sports team. And you saw that when the Warriors played them. Like I do think that they have like a pretty hardcore fan base. Like they've shown that. You could see that on when the in yesterday's game too. It just like the energy, like despite how piss poor the Kings played, like there was like a clear, the audience was very much like invested. And there is like a tangible presence that their fan base has. You know what I mean? Like that is like there is like a sense of pride. It's like it's a very big part of Sacramento. You saw that during like their whole Beam Team year, when they did make the playoffs. Like that was a huge thing. And I bet that kind of really brought in, a lot of their fans kind of together, and it feels very strong. just despite how, how poorly their franchise has been run and the lack of success and all of those things, like you can tell that the Kings mean a lot to Sacramento. That's just not the case with Houston. Games that I've watched over the course of this season, when I have watched like Houston, it's like even with how good the Rockets are, it's just not the same level of, there's just not like this sense of intensity. You know what I mean? Like just looking kind of at the stands and stuff in it, watching, Rockets games, like there are like, I don't know, like a decent amount of like empty seats where it's like, I feel like if your team, especially if your team is like top of the West, almost at the top of the West, like I feel like you would be able to, like, I don't know, be, I feel like that should maybe draw in more people, but I don't know. It's just not, it's not like it's not like a Rockets town. And so I do think that this does favor the Warriors in a lot of ways, where I do think like fans, that are like reside in Houston and stuff, or just fans that maybe just want to go, that do want to travel. I think that could be kind of a factor there. I'm not really worried about home court in this series. I'm really not. So I feel kind of good in that case, in that instance of, I don't think they have that presence yet. I don't know if they're maybe, I don't know, because this is like kind of like the first year of really having a lot of success, following like that James Harden team and all that. But but yeah, it just, I'm not, I think that might be kind of to the Warriors advantage there. And maybe it might not even matter, but I do think that's going to have a bit of an impact. I do. I think that Warriors will be pretty comfortable there. And they've had a lot of success in Toyota Center as well. So I'm not, I don't know. I think that could be something to take into consideration for this series as well. Like, I just don't think that home court is really going to be, the lack of getting home court advantage is an issue in this series. So yeah, maybe that's something to kind of keep an eye out. I do, I kind of want to see what it looks like over in Toyota Center. Maybe fans really do show up, and if that is the case, then obviously respect to that. But we'll see until we get there. The other series, so started with 2-7, 3-6. We got the Knicks and the Pistons in the Eastern Conference, and then we got the Lakers and Timberwolves in the Western Conference. I'll start off with the Lakers and the Wolves first. The Wolves are such a weird team, and they're such a weird team to like try and trust to do and make good decisions down the stretch. They've had just some questionable games this year, especially the one that comes to mind is the Bucks game where they let up like a 20 plus point lead with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's a little, I don't know, man. I don't want to give the Lakers any favorable points, but I think the Laker I think the Lakers are not going to necessarily be the ones beating the Wolves. I think it's going to be where the Wolves are beating themselves and making just poor decisions, and the fact that their offense just goes completely stagnant. I don't know. It's just been an issue for a number of years now, going back like a couple of years ago with Cat, before they sort of went on there. No, this was like 3 years ago. This was like the whole, this is the team with like Pat Bev, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, all those guys, right? Before the Gobert trade. That I remember that team running into just like a ton of just these like they were just running ISO plays and stuff like that. And I see instances of that happening now, like 3 years removed from that. And that's a little concerning. And maybe that's like an issue with, because I believe Chris Finch was the coach then too. So maybe that's just, it might be an issue with his coaching style. I don't know. But it's hard for me to trust. I was kind of worried about them, like for them going up against the Suns, right? Because they lost the very last game against the Suns, and a lot of people were favoring the Suns. Like I was sort of like, I don't know, like I don't even think I even made a prediction on who was gonna win, but I think I was maybe favoring the Suns. The Wolves, swept those guys, so that sort of worked out. And they were really able to kind of lock in that first round series, and obviously kind of led up to that epic game 7 game against Denver, and then eventually they lost in the Western Conference Finals against the Mavericks. But they just, I don't know, those issues in kind of the fourth quarter late game execution still exist for these guys. So I just I just don't have a ton of faith in them. So I think it's going to be the Lakers, unfortunately. Maybe like 6 or 7, I think is probably where it's going to end up. Like they just have the guys that you can like trust LeBron at 40, which is crazy to say, but you can trust LeBron at 40. Like if you need like a bucket or something, and you can probably trust Luka too, right? Even if he is maybe like not, even if he is like sort of adjusting to the Lakers team, and he doesn't have the same surrounding pieces that he had when he was on Dallas, like you can kind of still trust him to make some tough shots at the end of the game. So I don't know, man. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be the Lakers in this one. Now the Knicks and Pistons, this is one I've been talking about like a while now. This might be like my favorite outside of like, the Warriors one. I think this might be my favorite series that I'm looking forward to. Just the storyline with like the Pistons coming up and all of that. Cade and his just boost and trajectory, and his all-star just appearance and all of that, all of these things. This is probably kind of like my favorite series just in terms of those factors. And I'm just excited to see how it's going to look on at MSG, man. If there is like an upset of sorts, like in the first 2 games, like that's going to make this series really interesting. I do really think so. I do think the Knicks were probably going to win this one. I think it might go to 7 though. I think it might go to 7. I think the Pistons are going to really bring it. I think they're going to have this kind of this energy and intensity. They just might not have the same star power as the Knicks do, but I kind of want to see this go to 7. But I am going to take the Knicks on this. I think like Brunson is probably going to pull this through like at the end or something. I don't know who's going to guard Cat. Like maybe Isaiah Stewart does like a decent job, but they just don't have the personnel to kind of stop that necessarily, right? I think those two with a Cat and a Brunson is going to be kind of enough to overpower the Pistons here. But I am really looking forward. I think this is going to be a really fun series. I really do. I think this is going to be super exciting. Just seeing that on display. The other series, the 3-6 matchups. You got the Pacers Bucks, and then the no, sorry. Did I already say the other one? No, sorry, the 4-5 matchups. The Pacers Bucks, and then the Clippers Nuggets. I know a lot of people are like excited to watch the Nuggets Clippers matchup. For me, not so much. Obviously, it'll be fun to see, to watch Jokic in that environment. I just am not. The Clippers are really good. I just cannot trust that team. Just the injury issues, everything they've had. Like it's like, oh, this is gonna be the year. Oh, this is gonna be the year. Um, I just historically speaking, there's gonna be some. I don't want it to happen. Like I want to see everybody healthy, obviously, but there's just been too many things that have plagued this Clippers team over the course of the Kawhi era that I just cannot trust them to be healthy throughout the course of a 7 game series. That's really going to be the thing. Their defense is like excellent, right? What, they were like the second best defense or something like that. But it's just not going to be enough. I just don't think it's going to be enough to, and especially to stop Jokic, right? Denver, like their defense is ass, is terrible, but they got the best player. They got the best player. So I think I'm just that's my prediction. Of course, you can kind of get into the X and O's and schematics and all that stuff. Like you could be like, oh, Zubats can guard Jokic and all of that stuff, and that that might be like a huge thing there. But just this just the factor of Kawhi is just too much of a question mark. Like he looked awesome against us on Sunday, but I just do not trust that man to be able to stay afloat. I hope he does. Like it would be awesome to see a healthy Kawhi in a series, but it's a lot to ask for, I feel like. And even Harden has had some, he's older too, man. Like he's older and banged up and stuff. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of things to consider, but I think the injury factor and the health factor is going to be the biggest thing. It's going to be kind of the biggest factor for this series. So we'll see. My other kind of favorite, quote unquote favorite series outside of the Warriors one is the Pacers Bucks one. Huge news that came out today. It sounds like Damian Lillard has been cleared to play. Cleared of just like the whole blood clot issue, which is crazy. They're calling it like unprecedented and never seen before. Like I am worried that they're like maybe clearing him too early. You know what I mean? Because like in every other case of blood clots that we've seen, in the case of like a Chris Bosh or a Sar Thompson, more recently, and then obviously Wemby, these are things that have just completely taken these players out, especially in the case of Chris Bosh, who was, pushed into early retirement because of that. So I'm hoping that it's like they're not trying to, just for like general health reasons, I hope they're not trying to like push him to play. It would be awesome to see a healthy Dame. Like it would be awesome, but I really hope it's not like they're not like being callous with their decision to do so, just because like Dame or who, maybe there's a team or whatever really wants to see him on the court. You know what I mean? I hope that's not the case. But if he is, if it is true that he is cleared and he's like good to go, I mean, that's awesome. That's really awesome. I think that's going to make this, Pacers Bucks series far more interesting, at least for like the time being. I think you could sort of expect that the first maybe like few games of the series is gonna not have Dame, right? It's probably gonna have to be Giannis pulling through, but maybe this will give kind of him some motivation to like push through and those kinds of things, and level up. But it will be nice to see sort of like a mostly healthy Bucks team and to compete, especially Giannis, because we've kind of been neglected of that for the last sort of couple of seasons, right? But I am I would really like to kind of see what a full Bucks, lineup and roster is gonna look like against this Pacers team, because that Dame piece really changes a ton. You know what I mean? If this news didn't come out, I would say probably the Pacers in 6 or 7. I just don't know if the other supporting players on the Bucks are going to be able to do enough, right? And honestly, even with Dame, I'm still kind of leaning towards the Pacers. Like they just have more depth and more, contributors. They have players that can kind of step up, right? Like they have just so many players, I think, you know what I mean? They don't have a superstar. They have Tyrese and stuff, but he's just not to the same level but yet. But I do think that they have enough players that can really, like, if one player isn't doing as well, then they could have like a Benedict Mathurin come off the bench and score 30 or something, or an Obi Toppin, or a Nemhard or a Neesmith. Like, they have Pascal Siaka. Like all of the kind of the core rotational pieces are, I think, can contribute and can really potentially pop off. So they just have a lot of pieces that could really hurt you, and I just don't know if the Bucks can really match that firepower. So I think the depth of the Pacers is gonna kind of push them over. And even with like a Dame who I don't know when he's gonna come back, like maybe a game 3 if we're being like charitable. Even then, I don't know. I don't know if the Pacers go up 2-0. I would say it's probably wraps. It's not going to be a sweep, right? But I would say maybe Pacers in. I'll say Pacers in 7. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Dame coming back and giving the Bucks a bit more of a series, but I do like the Pacers' depth, and they just have more players. Like that's just kind of, I think that's just what it's going to come down to. The what else? Is that it? 1-8 matchups I just don't care about. I mean, listen, like I said, maybe they make it interesting. Maybe the Heat or the Hawks make it interesting. I have no idea. I mean, the Hawks, it didn't look good for them on Tuesday when they played the Magic. So I don't know if that's going to translate well against them, against the Cavs. The Heat looked good, but they were also playing the Bulls, so I don't know if that's going to really work out for them either. It just worked out because the Bulls defense was so bad that like Tyler Hero and other players were just able to score on a whim. And they were just like they were just waltzing to the basket. It was just like a free layup line for them. But yeah, I think it'll be a different situation with the Cavs. With the Thunder, I don't know. Like as I said, the Grizzlies, maybe, but Ja's sort of ankle thing kind of worries me a little bit, and also it's a pretty quick turnaround, right? Going from Friday and playing on Sunday. The Mavericks might be interesting with their like big lineup, but they just don't have the guards. So I don't know. But I don't really. I just don't see anybody that's a 8th seed really doing too much. Maybe stealing a game. Who knows? But those ones should be pretty clear and cut. Is that every series? I think that's it. Yeah, I think that should be it. But yeah, no basketball today. The final play-in games are tomorrow. I don't know. Am I going to talk about them? Probably not. I'll get into, once the playoffs officially start, I'll talk about all that. And talk about and give kind of like my reactions. Maybe I'll record something on Saturday, like after the games, because the games should be pretty early, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So Yeah, I'm excited. We're in playoff season. We're here. Um, and it's just right there. So just gotta wait a couple more days until they start up, and then we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll get some surprises. Maybe we'll get some, you know, maybe versus last year where there weren't as many interesting series for the first round. Hopefully we get some more this time around. Hopefully we get some more 6 to 7 game series. Because last year we had, um, I mean, it was just like the Pacers Bucks that went to 6, I think, and then the Knicks and the Sixers, which is probably the best series out of all of them, and that only went to 6. So yeah, hopefully we get more of those. And it makes things a lot more exciting and more drama and those kinds of things. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.